Welcome back to mine and Carson's channel. And today we are going, why is he back there? He's watching. Anyway, today we are going to talk a little bit about what I'm feeling, and that is post-semifinal blues. Actually, I heard Chase Ingram describe it as that on, I believe it was Death By. And when he said that, I related. I think I mentioned it in my last video when I was wrapping up semifinals, saying like, I'm just a little sad. I'm always a little sad when it's over. It's not quite the level of sadness I get when the games is over, because then things are pretty sad. Then we don't have a lot of CrossFit for a long time. Basically until the Open. There's Rogue, and Rogue is great, but it's not the same as the actual season. But anyway, let's not focus on the blues. I'm going to keep creating content here so that we can all feel a little less sad. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to make us all less sad. And if you want to be less sad and enjoy some content here on my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. I'll be making content over the next 2 months when CrossFit will be making a lot less content. So subscribe here for your CrossFit content and, you know, have a good time. But there's a topic that has been discussed quite a bit over the last couple of days since semifinals has ended, and that is the Last Chance Qualifier. To be incredibly clear, we do not have one this year. All the athletes who have qualified have punched those tickets and are going to the CrossFit Games. If athletes didn't make it, that's it, their season is over. But there were years that we did have the Last Chance Qualifier, 2022, 2021, and athletes that just finished outside of a qualifying position at semifinals were able to do the Last Chance Qualifier, and the top 2 men and women made it to the games. They got rid of that, and they gave some of these allotments of spots to some other regions based on the worldwide ranking system, which we've discussed is flawed, but it's still a work in progress. And I think CrossFit has acknowledged it's a work in progress. So we just all have to be a little bit patient as they figure out the best way to do that. Rogue is doing their own ranking system this year for their invitational. So it'll be interesting to see the results that they get versus the results that we're seeing on CrossFit side. They're using different metrics, different number of years. So that'll be interesting. But basically, this worldwide ranking system allotted the spots to the regions that now have the spots, and there is no Last Chance Qualifier. I kind of wish there was. And they talked about this also on Death By, which I had mentioned at the beginning of this, and the 3 people they had on that podcast all said they don't like the Last Chance Qualifier and they're glad it's not here. Oops, I spoiled that. Sorry. You can still go back and watch it. But I think the Last Chance Qualifier provided some value. So someone on the podcast, I believe it was Chase, said that it kind of allowed athletes to, he insinuated, not try as hard because they can potentially still make it in the Last Chance Qualifier.
People dropping dumbbells. You know what happens when you have a Last Chance Qualifier? It's like, oh yeah, they did it, but there's a Last Chance Qualifier.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that was one of the, I'm so glad they scrapped that.
At the end of the day, they didn't make it. I don't see any reason why they should have a chance to make it again. It just like, it devalues the importance of semifinals.
I don't think anyone would be doing that. I think everyone wants to punch their ticket as early as possible. So I can't imagine anyone over there being like, walking into the first event and saying, I don't need to get top 10, 8, 9, whatever is needed in that region. I'll just make it to the Last Chance Qualifier and try to do it there. No one's doing that. So I don't think that's actually like a thing anyone has to worry about. People not trying as hard because there's a Last Chance Qualifier. No. In fact, like, I think it could have helped some athletes like the Yonakovskis, who was so far out from a qualifying position after day 1 that it was looking unlikely, to know that, hey, if I make it to this number versus actually making it into the qualifying, I still have a chance of my season continuing in the Last Chance Qualifier. Jack Farlow is another example. Annika Greer, who almost made it and would certainly have being one spot out made it to the Last Chance Qualifier if they were doing that. So I think it could give some athletes some more hope. I think all of us right now as fans, not that matters as much, but as fans in this 2-month period in between semifinals and the games, there's not a whole lot for us to watch. These athletes aren't really competing in many things because they're getting ready for the games. But the Last Chance Qualifier would have given us something in between these two events to keep us interested. I will be interested either way. I just want to make that clear for anyone in the comments who's going to be like, I'm still interested. Yeah, I know, me too. I am also still interested right now. But I'm just saying it gives us something extra to look forward to. And it gives some of these fantastic athletes that aren't going to be in the field this year a second shot at making it to the games. And some of those athletes, I made a little list off the top of my head, like Yona Koski, Colton Mertens, Kelsey Kiel, Olivia Kerstetter, Tyler Christoffel, Amanda Barnhart, Annika Greer. All of those athletes would still sort of be in the race. None of them would have wanted to be in the Last Chance Qualifier race, I imagine. I didn't ask them, but this is just, you know, context clues. I imagine none of these athletes would want to be in that position, but it would give them a reason to have a little bit of hope right now that they can make it to the games, because they still would have an opportunity. And 2 athletes would get the chance, 2 men, 2 women, to punch their ticket to the CrossFit Games still. And that's exciting for the athletes that were knocked out, and it's exciting for all of us watching. So I think it's kind of a win-win. One of the things that Matt O'Keefe, Justin Kotler, Chase Ingram were talking about on Death By they don't like is like, they're like, do we need another online competition? Yeah, I get that. And I agree that who wants another online competition? Sort of. But this is just a cool opportunity to get these athletes more attention on them as athletes, more opportunities for them to do well, more opportunities to get the best people to the games. So I think that the pros outweigh the cons. I understand as coaches, some of them, they don't want to have to coach people through another online qualifier, which I'm sure has its own stresses because you're not getting instant feedback from judging and you might get dinged with penalties after the fact. And I get it. Like, I get why coaches might not love the idea. But the fact that the athletes still have a shot and that all of us get something to be excited to watch, and some of these, our favorite athletes, might still make it to the games, I think those are all good reasons to do it. And like I mentioned, and I will show you this now, but it helps get the best people to the games. So in 2021, when we had the Last Chance Qualifier, Christy Ermo O'Connell was one of the athletes that qualified through the Last Chance Qualifier. She didn't qualify at Granite Games, and then she ended up finishing in 8th place overall at the CrossFit Games. 8th out of 40, one of the top 10 athletes qualified out of the Last Chance Qualifier. So some of the best athletes sometimes do end up in this Last Chance Qualifier because they have a bad weekend, because they have a bad event. And I know that everyone's in the same situation here. Everyone could have those negative things happen and end up in this situation, which is why I think it's great to have an opportunity to have a second chance to make it. That same year, 2021, Roman Krennikov won the Last Chance Qualifier on the men's side. He couldn't get to the games, which is also why he was in the Last Chance Qualifier. He couldn't travel to do semifinals, which is also another way this Last Chance Qualifier could benefit people. Every once in a while, we hear about people like Ellie Turner, for example. She ended up being injured and pulling out for the year, but if she didn't want to travel back to Australia because she couldn't get an exemption to qualify in the East, North America East, she could have went to the Last Chance Qualifier, punched her ticket that way, as Roman did in 2021. So it gives another opportunity for athletes like that might not be able to travel, but aren't able to meet CrossFit's exemption requirement to compete in a different region. They can compete in the Last Chance Qualifier and still have a shot at making it to the games, as opposed to saying, can't do it because I couldn't travel. So Roman Krennikov in 2021 was the first man who qualified. He ended up not being able to travel for the games either. that's a little bit more of a complicated situation compared to someone like Ellie Turner, who I imagine if she wasn't injured and didn't pull out for the season and did compete through a last chance qualifier, would be able to make it to the games because she's already here in the US. Roman's is very different. But if he had made it to the games, if he was able to travel to the games, he would have had top 10 potential too. He always has been top 10 at the games. He's always been like top 3. So Roman is an example of someone also who qualified to the last chance qualifier and would have made a difference at the games. Alexander Caron got the other spot that year. He finished 24th. It's not a great finish, but still ahead of 16 people who punched their ticket through the semifinals. And then in 2022, we had Koski finish through the last chance qualifier. He could have possibly done that this year too, but there isn't one. And he finished 15th in 2022, and Ariel Lowen qualified, and she finished 11th. So these athletes that are qualifying through this are fantastic athletes. And I was listening to the Barbell Spin, and I believe it was John Young who said that he felt that some of these regions that aren't as competitive should... Oh, he doesn't like this take. I don't think Carson likes this take. But if I'm understanding John's take correctly, he thought that some of these weaker regions or less developed regions should have to qualify through the last chance qualifier to actually make it to the games. So they're not competing for game spots in their semifinal. They're competing for a spot in the last chance qualifier to make it to the games. I'm not sure if it is a fair way to do it, but it really would show us whether these less developed regions are worthy of having a position at the games. Because if they compete the 1, 2, and 3 from that region in the last chance qualifier against the, 12th, 13th, and 14th from North America East and don't qualify, I think that would say a lot. So it's an interesting hypothesis. Whether it should be done, I'm not entirely sure, because I do think having that diversity aspect and giving these other regions a chance to develop more by giving them representation can be beneficial too. But I don't hate the idea. And then also there was one more interesting idea, and that was something that Sean Woodland popped up in Death By to discuss about this. And he was saying that him and Tommy Marquez were talking about how maybe they should do something at the games. Like a couple days before the game starts, maybe starting on Monday through Tuesday, doing just a few events, 3, 4 events, and taking those last chance qualifier positions, the last 3 or 4 out of the semifinals, bringing them to Fort Worth if they choose to participate, and doing a small in-person competition in those days leading up to the games. And if you make it, you get to punch your game spot. So still taking the top 2 women and men from that last chance competition in person right before the games. Yes, it puts you at a disadvantage because you're working out and trying to win right before the games. But I think a lot of these athletes would still do it because they would get to go to the games. And Sean compared it to the play-in games for the NCAA tournament, the Dayton games, or to the wild card games in some of other sports we have, professional sports. And I think that's an interesting idea. And I do think a lot of the athletes that were right outside would participate in that. Maybe not all of them. Maybe not all of them would want to travel, but some of them that could likely would. And it does just keep these athletes alive a little bit longer in the season. And I explained that some of these athletes that are just on the outside could have top 10 potential at the games. We've seen it happen in previous iterations of the last chance qualifier. It could happen again. There are people that are left out this year that could have had significance at the games, could have been top 10 potential. So I wouldn't mind bringing back the last chance qualifier in some iteration. When I was talking about this 2-month period of us not having anything, doing Sean and Tommy's idea of bringing the athletes a couple days before to Fort Worth doesn't really solve that problem, where the last chance qualifier in the way it used to be would, because it would be say mid-June, end of June, we'd have something to talk about right now, these athletes still have a shot. But we're not talking about that because it doesn't exist. So let me know if you think the last chance qualifier should exist. I totally understand the perspective of these athletes all had equal opportunity. They should have punched their ticket when they were there, when they had the opportunity at semifinals. But, you know, some of us believe in second chances. I'm one of them. Like I said, give us something to be excited about and give those athletes that were just on the outside looking in some hope. I think it would have been a fun thing to see again this year. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. I appreciate you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Say bye to Carson. Bye, buddy. Camera. Oh, okay, bye. Bye.